Leaf fans were putting out a lot of trade proposals these days. It is episode 37 of the Hot Take Hockey podcast. Lucas, myself, John. We thought, the conference finals as we're recording right now is going into game 6. So just keep that in mind when you're listening in. We're just going to talk about this trade stuff here. And then we'll do a cup final preview on the pod as well. But Lucas, man, looking at stuff around Mitch Marner, and we've kind of laughed about it here pre-recording. I guess just how do you feel? Because looking at Cam no sleeves right now, he's talking about we're talking about all these proposals, no GM in place, and everyone's trying to get these proposals for Mitch Marner, including these Carolina trade proposals. So how are you feeling on it?
Yeah, shout out Cam no sleeves off the top, but
yeah.
I'm feeling good. I'm feeling good about it. Overall, they're going to have to, probably make a move. We talked about this on previous episodes. We've talked about it off air. The Leafs are probably going to have to mix up the core. Marner and Nylander are kind of those two pieces that are the easiest to, make mock trades about, I feel like, and are the most reasonable in terms of, or I guess realistic would be the best way to put it. So I know Marner's in a lot of trade conversations like we've been talking about here. And this one with Carolina, obviously there's been numerous Carolina packages that Leaf fans, hockey fans are speculating about in general. This one here with, if you want to tee it up, John, I can give you my quick thoughts on it.
With the Leafs acquiring Martin Necas, Brett Pesce, Alexander Pashin, a first-round pick in 2023 and a second-round pick in 2024. So that's the proposed trade here. Carolina gets Mitch Marner and Ronnie Hirvonen. This is from House of Hockey. Yeah, Lucas, if you just want to give your thoughts. To me, I've kind of talked about packages like this. You're getting Necas and Pesce at combined, $7 million cap hit combined, essentially. But they both need extensions. So what are your thoughts on this one?
Yeah, I feel like it's interesting because you're trading two pieces that overall the sum of their production isn't going to add up to Marner's production. So right away, some Leaf fans may be, speculative of this and just, not want it because of the ability Marner has offensively. But I think this is two great pieces, and it's a creative way of thinking for the Leafs to add both on the back end and up front. Obviously, Marty Necas had a huge year this year, over 70 points. So I like this type of trade. And the Leafs have been heavily linked to Brett Pesce for a while, and he would really solidify that back end. Like if you drop Pesce on there, John, like the Leafs D starts to look pretty nice, right? Going into next year, you don't need to depend on Geo as much as you had in the past. Yep. So that helps a lot.
And Jake McCabe might not have to be in the top 4, which is probably a better role for him.
Yep. And Luke Schenn, we don't know. He might get an offer of exceeding $2 million or maybe getting multiple, years on his deal from some other team. So that helps with losing him. The Leafs have holes to fill on the blue line if they're not bringing back Schenn, because obviously Hall's probably not coming back. So Pesce would be a great addition for that. And Marty Necas, I think, would fit really well with the Leafs forward group. But I like this one, man. I think it's pretty realistic too, considering a lot of the other ones we've seen and laughed at.
Yeah. So let's pull up a couple from today and just like some of these conversations. So like Howard Berger talking about like Carolina and Toronto. To me, I think a lot of people are just getting ahead of themselves. I wouldn't read too much into what you see on Twitter. We've talked about it, but this is the vibe from a lot of Leaf fans, and Lucas and I were just kind of laughing it off and just saying like, this is the same old stuff. You know what? There's talks about like trades and talks about maybe scenarios, but then there's also just like complete reaches. And this is just one of them. Like looking at what Svechnikov has done in his individual career, to add him into a trade proposal potentially and include like 3 or 4 more assets is absolutely nuts. It's delusional. And I think a lot of people, Lucas, give me shit for talking about a Marner trade. And I've talked about a Marner trade for a few years now. You've got to get a significant piece, but there's 2 types of deals you can go for. It's the deal we just talked about, or it's more of like a 1-for-1 or a 1-for-2. And that's why I said to you, Lucas, off air was like, okay, if you can call Carolina and be like, all right, is there a scenario where Aho's not extending in Carolina? Mm-hmm. And if that's a scenario where Aho's only got 1 year left and you're Toronto and you have permission to talk to him or have just a confidence that you're going to be able to extend Aho in Toronto, if you trade for him, then maybe you do an Aho and a Pesce, for example, for Marner. And say you want to throw some more cap at Carolina, you include Yarncrow, for example, ends up being a 2-for-2 big deal. That's more realistic than whatever this Leaf fan is trying to propose here. Like Aho or Svech, like that's already like a reach in itself, including Svech in the conversation. But then Slavin, again, Lucas, we talked about it. To me, for Carolina, there's 2, not untouchables, but like there's 2 guys they're not going to get rid of, and it's probably Slavin and Svech. Like those are two of the guys they want to keep. Like,
absolutely. I mean, Svech is also what, 3 years younger than Marner, so the Leafs would be getting younger if they got Svech.
I think
back.
was he 2017 or 2018? I think it's 2018, right? After Dahlin. So yeah, he's 3 years younger, which is, man, that's another conversation. Just fans are just not like, why would absorbing
Carolina,
that.
Yeah, why would Carolina even entertain something like this? Yeah. And we haven't even gotten to the decent prospect and a pick still to be added in. I mean, I liked what you were proposing there, John, with like, Aho to Marner. Obviously, the value maybe doesn't add up in terms of, Marner has a more established career offensively. Aho's got that center ice position though, and I think that gives him some more value. So I think Aho coming back to the Leafs would be unbelievable because it helps you get Viveiros over to the wing in the latter stage of his career. So I like that, but obviously Carolina might have to sweeten that pot to get a top winger in the league like Marner.
And of course, Marner's got the additional year on his contract too, right? So you're getting 2 years of control. And I think that's really valuable. People can talk about the 11 million against Marner all you want. And you know what? I criticize the amount quite a bit, but Marner just showed that he can basically reach 100 points back-to-back years. So like when we're talking about $11 million, and I mean, there's a lot of guys that make $11 million in this league that don't step up. And I mean, specifically Lucas, I think it's another year of like in the Final Four, there's not one single player that makes like over 10 mil of a cap hit. Yeah. So for me, it's like Marner puts up the numbers. He's great on both ends of the ice. As much as I criticize the guy, I mean, he's not far off from where I criticize it a lot, but like realistically, I think where he should have been at was like that 9.5 range where we've seen contracts like Brandon and Kucherov and stuff like that. So it's not out of this world for Carolina to take on 10.9 for a couple more years, especially if Aho is out the door and another contract. So yeah, I mean, I think that's more realistic, but just to look at this one too, it's like, this is the expectation from Leaf fans, Lucas, and it's just so brutal. Like, how on earth can you expect like Jarvis? Like, are you serious?
I know.
Like, do we not know how good Jarvis is?
A first-round pick, Jarvis, and he was a playoff performer this year. Like, there's no way. I mean, John, also too, like, I'm finding that a lot of the conversation is, comparing it to the trade of last year with Tkachuk for Huberdeau and Weegar, that type of deal. I mean, yeah, maybe there's sort of a comparison there a little bit, but how do we get to 4 assets all of a sudden? I mean, Florida got Tkachuk for Huberdeau, who they invested a lot of time into. He was a lifelong Panther, and Weegar. And Weegar, although had a great year last year, I guess the year before with Florida, he was very, very good.
Yeah.
I don't think Weegar is at the level of a Slavin in terms of proven track record. And Huberdeau, obviously he came off a monster year in Florida when he got dealt, but before that, he was always just a really solid offensive piece. Like Aho and Svechnikov are like, huge.
Yeah, these conversations are great. Like, and the age,
getting out of hand, man.
You have to look at the ages too, right? It's like Huberdeau and Weegar. We're talking about guys like into the 30s.
Yeah.
Like Aho is still a few years until he's there. I mean, Jarvis and Svechnikov are both under 23, right? Under 24. Yeah. So it's like to include those guys is crazy. I mean, like I said, I can see Aho, Pesce being pieces that Carolina potentially moves here if they really do want to shake up. But guys like Svech, guys like Jarvis, guys like Slavin, I just can't see them giving up. And yeah, I mean, having 4 assets like that, like, you know what? If there's a scenario where Toronto has, I don't know, more on their side, as I said, then you take out Jarvis, maybe the first round picks included here. But again, it's just like, it really depends on the scenario. We really don't know what's happening behind closed doors, but to talk about guys like Svech, Jarvis is stupid to me.
It's getting out of hand. I mean, even Carolina made the conference finals this year. That boosted the value of Jarvis the way he played. That boosted the value of, Aho was doing it in large stretches offensively by himself a little bit. I mean, these guys' values only increased the last few months. I don't necessarily get how this is discussed at all. So
I was also going to say, I think a lot of Leaf fans, and Lucas, this is also like maybe a problem of just like, and I keep going back to that saying of like, it's insanity just to keep doing the same thing over and over again when it's not working. And it just goes back to like Leaf fans not wanting to trade Marner, and not wanting to make a change in the big 4. And like, these are the moves that are being proposed because they don't want it. Like, it's this or nothing. Like, like it's if it's any less, okay, then we're just keeping the guy. And it's just like, to me, you know what? I look at the Calgary Florida move, as you just kind of brought up, and like, obviously it didn't work out at all for Calgary, but again, very different scenario in the sense is like, Calgary was like just trying to go for a quick repair. And that's why people are nervous about the trade living thing, is like, Toronto really shouldn't be doing that. If Toronto's going to make a trade like this, it's not bringing in 2 aging guys just to send it crazy extensions. Like, the equivalent to that would be like if so Pesci is 29, so kind of similar to the Uyghur thing. If it was two guys like going into the 30s and then Toronto just signs like stupid extensions, then I'm having a concern for this trade. But if it's guys like Aho or Natchez in this deal, there's a lot of age and career left to showcase if you're Toronto. So it's not like that in my opinion. But yeah, I mean, for me, man, I think that's the Leaf fans' vibes. It's just like these outrageous proposals, because if it's not that, they want to keep Marner.
Yeah, man,
that's what it is.
Eventually it's got to get to a point of realism and what's actually going to happen. And I think a lot of these trades are out to lunch. The one off the top, I think, is closer to what something like we'd see.
I think I would want Toronto to get more, unless Natchez and Pesci were coming in with guaranteed extensions. If they were coming in with realistic guaranteed extensions that are not breaking the bank for Toronto and putting them in a tough cap spot, like if it can come in to where, okay, Marner's going to Carolina, you get extension and conversations done with Natchez and Pesci. If those are the two major pieces back, I don't know how it can be a major loss. Like to me, it just wouldn't. If you end up making other deals, we talked about like if they look at a guy like Tyler Bertuzzi in free agency or go for trades, it's just filling in the pieces. You can't just make a move like this and then leave it as is, in my opinion.
Yeah, and with a trade like this too, we were talking about it off air, but Marty Natchez and Brett Pesci, their salaries combined with a new contract would be probably around where Marner's is going to lie, right? So
you're around 11, I'd say total. Yeah,
yeah, and then also, if they're able to get a draft pick in the deal as well, like a first or a second, excuse me, that's something they can parlay to another trade too, right? So.
Yeah, no, for sure. That's why I am thinking if it is two pieces like that, yeah, I mean, I think out loud is like Pesci, and comparable to other contracts. Like, I mean, the Parayko contract looks like a mess. But I think I would see Pesci somewhere in between 5 and 6 mil. So we'll say, yeah, Pesci's like 5.5 long-term, for example, or 5 long-term. And then Natchez is probably going to be above 5 long-term, I think, with his numbers. Maybe even higher. So definitely going to be over 10 combined. But yeah, no, I'm with you. I think, to me, if you're going to run it back, say we talked about it off air too. If you're going to run it back with all 4 guys, you really have got to make better changes around these guys than freaking Calle Jarnkrok. Like, Calle Jarnkrok was a fine signing, I guess, for that price. It to me, it's just like, it's whatever. But Calle Jarnkrok is just another example. I mean, I talked about it literally when he got signed. If you look at his numbers, I hate just looking at a guy's numbers, but if you look at his numbers, he's a season performer. He doesn't really do much in the playoffs. He had a bit of numbers when Nashville went to the Cup final, but outside of that, he never really had playoff numbers. Even with Calgary, Calgary was really disappointed what they got from him in their short playoff stint. And they paid like a 2nd round pick to get him from Seattle or something like that. So, I mean, it's just got to be better, man. As you said, Nyes cannot be this big presence, big addition that they have. Kind of what, like, that's why people will criticize Dubas. Who knows what happened? Who knows if they were trying to trade that Boston 1st round pick? But like, the fact that Nyes had so much expectation and so much standard, and now Bunting probably won't even be back. Like, that left side is embarrassing. Like, that's
so weak.
You have to fix.
It's so weak. Like, Matthew Nyes, I'm very confident he's going to be a really good player for a long time, and he's probably going to jump in the lineup next year and be solid for the Leafs. But like we said, man, he can't be, that can't be what you're betting on, right? You need to have you need to insulate the forwards with more impact players than Matty Nyes being your headline guy coming into training camp. So lots to chew on, lots to talk about. I'm sure we're going to do this over the summer as well as it gets nice and hot outside. But yeah, dude, really excited to keep the trade talk going, and the finals coming up too, right? Keep locked in. Stanley Cup Finals. Make sure you guys follow the Hot Take Hockey podcast. Follow us on Twitter. Make sure you check it out on Spotify and Apple. And yes, we'll be getting a lot more proposals. The Marner stuff's been hot on the conversation, so we had to cover it. And just as we're recording right now, once the conference finals finish and the Cup finals about to begin, we'll record a Hot Take Hockey podcast Stanley Cup preview. So from Lucas, myself, John, this is a little trade proposal review, and we'll see you on the next one. Let us know if you enjoyed this one. And hit the like, rate high. Have a good one. Peace.